Learn how to bring an innovative medical device to market in the United States. How COO Kelly Mottet and her team got a win for Mach32 on today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so you can get inspired and grow your business. Here's your host, Gordon Shepherd. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. And before I get started, I just want to give a big shout out to all the outstanding leaders that have already been on this show. Karen Unland, the co-founder of Taproot Publishing, who taught us how to do wellness checks at the beginning of every meeting so we can attract and retain top talent. And that was on episode 2. On episode 3, it was Chelsea Yarmuch, the director of finance at McKillican, who showed us how to move from asset-based lending to traditional financing, which saved her company a lot of time and money. Your success stories are already inspiring other senior leaders around the world, and that will help them to grow their skills and their businesses. On today's episode, you'll learn how to bring an innovative medical device to market in the United States, and that's with Kelly Mottet, the COO of Mach32. But before we get started, I just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by the Executive Wins Workshop. In this high-impact workshop, executive teams learn how to reverse engineer past wins in a structured way so they can get more wins in the future. This highly interactive session is for senior leadership teams who really want to improve profitability, processes, communication, and a whole lot more. I'll be your facilitator, bringing 25 plus years of experience and a proven system that you can learn to improve the overall results in your business. It's available in half-day, full-day, and customizable formats, and it's great for team building and corporate retreats. There's also an in-depth version called a Wins Audit, and this is when I interview people from all levels of a company to find out how they get their wins, and then I deliver a summary to the executive team. And because I'm not in the family, the results are real. So if you're an executive who wants to find out how people in your company get their wins, and then also get analysis about whether or not those wins are aligned with your strategy, then visit executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. And now on to today's show. We are fortunate to be joined by Kelly Mottet, the CEO of Mach32, an Edmonton-based startup that builds innovative medical devices to stop people from bleeding to death. In this episode, Kelly talks about the persistent, multi-year journey her team has taken to get to the next step in commercializing their new medical device in the United States. And before we get into it, I want to remind you that this interview follows a specific format that I created called The Anatomy of a Win, to help you learn the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every business win you hear on this show. My hope is that you can adopt this format to reach your next business milestone. And now here's Kelly Mottet with her executive win. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gordon.
It's really great to have you here because what strikes me about spending a bit of time with you is there's sort of brains oozing out of your ears in terms of what you folks are tackling here. Although there's going to be some people here that aren't even aware of that high level of acumen that you and your team have. But so for the people that don't know you, can you please introduce yourself, say who you are, your title, and then also, your venture and what you're doing. It's so exciting.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Kelly Mottet. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Mach32. At Mach32, we stop people from bleeding to death. It's really as simple as that. We are taking a generic medication and giving it a new route of administration. So an easy and simple way to think of this is as an EpiPen, but for traumatic bleeding. I have spent most of my career in the medical device product development space, in working on startups, working on new products, and this is actually the second product that I've done in hemorrhage control or bleeding control, specifically designed for outside the hospital. So think military medics, EMS, police officers, firefighters, and hopefully one day these products will be available for people like me without a clinical background, without medical training, so that we can use them if we need to save lives.
Wow, that is ambitious and remarkable all at once. And I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of expertise to kind of get, into this area to tackle something that is such a significant issue and you're getting that along the way. How long has your startup been in business, and what sort of stage are you at now?
Yeah, so Mach32 was founded in 2019. We took a little bit of a COVID pivot, if you will. So let's say we haven't been fully working on our auto injector or our EpiPen for traumatic bleeding the whole time. But what we have done is we have built functional working prototypes and we have tested them in live tissue to ensure that they work. We have developed a unique proprietary formulation of the generic drug that we're working at. So we have a bona fide pharmaceutical asset. And we just recently announced a U.S. government contract to support our R&D work. So we're very excited about that.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that just takes so much work along the way. And I remember chatting with you in the pre-interview and just talking about, it's a big deal to lead a team to actually kind of get this thing done. And there's the ups and downs of the reality of what you've been dealing with since 2019. You've gotten it this far. If you had to describe your sort of biggest win in this venture so far, and I'm sure there's been many, what would it be and how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, what I'm going to list as our biggest win, because it's most recent, is the execution of the BARDA contract, BARDA being part of the U.S. government. It's tremendous validation for what we're doing, that there's a really strong market pull. It took a year to get it to happen, and it's just super exciting, game-changing for us as a small little Edmonton, Alberta company, being on the radar of an organization as big as BARDA in the United States.
It sounds like the big leagues, right? You're in the minor leagues for a little while there. You're chipping away. You're doing your thing. You know it's got potential. And I'm going to really slow down for the audience here to make sure that we understand BARDA and the significance of this. So if I'm trying to take a product like yours into the United States, what are a couple of the steps that get me to BARDA? And then tell me about BARDA.
Yeah, so I'll start with telling you about BARDA. So BARDA is part of Health and Human Services in the United States. They have a $2 billion budget every year to prepare for natural and man-made disasters. They do everything from flu vaccine every year to developing antidotes for chemical agents or radiological agents. So they are very interested in bleeding because whenever you have trauma or injury, you often have a lot of bleeding and uncontrolled bleeding, or any sort of mass casualty situation where you got limited resources. Our tool is perfect for those situations. And so BARDA funds projects. They fund them all the way through to FDA approval. So that kind of speaks to what is the pathway going into the United States, or kind of what is the pathway anywhere? Anywhere we, as a medical device or a medical product, we need to get regulatory approval in the United States. That's with the FDA. That might involve conducting clinical studies. Those can be quite expensive, and as well as preclinical testing to make sure that we're safe, even before we go into the clinic and test it clinically. So this BARDA agreement, it's $750,000 US. So that's a significant chunk of change for a small company like ours. And it funds interactions with the FDA to confirm the regulatory approval. It confirms development of a proprietary drug, and it also involves preclinical testing. So it really moves us forward. And it's also the gateway to the future. They have expressed interest in funding the entire development pathway all the way through to FDA approval. And BARDA has done this for many other groups that they're interested in developing and commercializing those technologies.
That's remarkable. And talk about getting skin in the game. I mean, this is not a couple $100 here. This is a significant investment on the part of your company. You're playing the full game, which is the long game, right? Because you're in this sort of medical space, and that's what it takes to kind of get there. Just for fun, how did you get on BARDA's radar? Do you just sort of you call them up and go, we're in kind of thing, or what happens?
Oh, you hustle. And I have no other way to describe it than you hustle it, and you hustle a lot. So for us, it was a combination of asking who could introduce us, going to networking events. BARDA has specific industry days where they invite companies to come. They also go to some of the conferences that we also attend. It's just hustling to try and meet the right people. it probably took us 6 months to meet the right person and then a year to get the contract together. But once we met the right person, we knew we were going to get a contract fairly quickly because we were talking to the right people. We just needed to jump through the government hoops then.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that's the trepidation there. Like, we're going to try, we think we need to meet somebody, we met the wrong person. I'm sure there's sort of, if we broke down your whole journey, that would be quite a story in and of itself. But in the meantime, you've got this win, which is getting this BARDA stage, moving forward for your business, significant in the way that you've set us up. So we're all in good shape for understanding where it's at. Now we get into what I call the anatomy of a win. And this is this idea of, what is the strategy, the work plan, the people, operations, and results behind this win. And when I say strategy, I mean, what was the vision? What was the sort of the mission, the values, in a sense, or the goals and objectives that went into going after this in the first place?
Yeah, so my background is in product development, other medical technologies. So we knew very early on that BARDA was an attractive target for us, similarly to the way you would imagine that the military is an attractive target for us. And so we had identified them really early and just knew that we needed to get to the right people and that it would take time. We knew that we would have to start early and have to be extremely persistent and also be very clear in our messaging. We had to be ready for the opportunity, whenever it came, right? You don't know at an event who you're going to meet. And I've definitely been at BARDA industry days where their staff has been like, hey, come meet this like high-ranking individual and go tell them what you're doing and where you're at and be prepared to answer all of their specific questions. So
I love it. And so did you do some it's not like a mock interview, but it's almost like a mock networking moment where you've got to be like an actor kind of prepared with your script. Is that about right?
Well, it's not that much different than pitching, to be honest. I don't know that investors would like to hear that it's an actor with a script when we're pitching, but it's just about telling your story over and over to as many people as you can and getting feedback and finding the themes in the feedback and then tailoring your message, making sure that you get it as clear as possible. It's rare that I get questions now that I haven't gotten before, but, it's taken a lot. I've told the story often and I've gotten lots of questions and then I'm prepared. So that's what I think it is just keep telling it. When someone doesn't understand, figure out another way to tell it. Just keep pushing and telling that story.
I love the tone in your voice because there's an entrepreneurial patience in what you're describing around not being discouraged in the first 10, 20, 30 tellings of this story. You can hear the enthusiasm because you took it as a learning opportunity to actually, if I get to tell it again, that's a great opportunity because I'm getting a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's fantastic. So the strategy early on, you knew Bartha was in your sights early on and you were ready for it. So when the moments came, you went to these networking events. That was a persistent thing to do as well. And again, a huge goal, and you sort of met that objective and you've gotten through now to this next step. What was if we had to describe the what, who, and the when, the work plan, in a sense, to execute the strategy? Take me back to it sound like minutiae a little bit, but there's something like, okay, well, we have to pick the first event to go see if we can intersect with these people. Take me through some of those moments along the timeline?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've been in this space for a little while, but my co-founder is Dr. Mark Curiel, emergency room physician at the Misericordia, and this is his first time doing a medical product. So I kind of knew where to go, but it was a matter of us getting our stories straight and us functioning as a team so that we were looping each other in on the feedback that we were getting when we were telling that story. We often didn't have the resources or the bandwidth to send both of us to events. So we'd have to divide and conquer those events and then make sure we were closing the loop on all of that communication. And travel's tough. You think business travel, oh, this will be fun, but it grows old so fast. And so it takes a lot of perseverance to get through some of the crazy travel schedules. And I know my schedule is not as bad as some, but there's been weeks when I've been on 10 different planes going here, there, and everywhere. So, but it's that level, I'll come back to it. That's that level of hustle that's needed. And it's needed from your whole team, right? we have a very small team and we need everyone to be helping out on whether it's preparing for an investor pitch or preparing to pitch a group like BARDA, which we view very similarly as an investor, just more of a strategic investor and customer.
That is remarkable. So again, in the work plan, if we actually broke it down, we would hear something like dozens of meetings, dozens of flights, dozens of coordinating calls, dozens of learning on top of learning from who do we see and who do we intersect? How do we then bifurcate the contacts that we had and not talk to this person next, but talk to that person next? So many things along the way that if we really got into the nitty gritty, we would hear the fine-tooth comb of all those details. Well, congratulations again. And again, you don't sound disappointed. You sound so enthusiastic. It's just a wonderful thing because you're getting payoff for your strategy and the work plan that you put in place to get this far. So that's remarkable as an entrepreneur. And I hope the folks that are entrepreneurs listening to this, are inspired by the way you're tackling it in terms of your own approach. I think that's really great. The third step that I talk about in the anatomy of a win is who are the people involved? Who are the stakeholders involved? And I'm hearing there's you and your team, and then there's the gentleman that you mentioned as well, who's the physician, and that's sort of your core group in a sense, and then there's the people at BARDA that you're running into, and maybe even other people. So who would you say the key stakeholders are in making this go forward?
Yeah, so I'd like to add a new group into that, which would be our contractors, and let's go with advisors being maybe a better term for them, but we're a small team and we have knowledge gaps, and sometimes we're a little blind to those knowledge gaps too. So we did a really good job at the beginning of identifying where are our knowledge gaps and where do we need subject matter expertise. I think of who's the expert on the regulatory side with the FDA with a combination product or an auto injector specifically like what we're doing. Who are the experts in IP that can help us navigate this landscape? Even though I've been in the space for a while, those are things that I know a little bit about, but not enough. And when you're trying to get a government contract, especially with somebody like BARDA, they have experts on their side and they're going to be asking tons of tough questions. So these SMEs, subject matter experts that we were able to bring in as advisors, whether as a consultant or just, a friendly individual who's, works in the space, is a first responder that can give us advice, is extremely, extremely useful. And I don't think we would have developed a good strategy for go-to-market, a good strategy for product development, and even a good product without that user feedback and that network. So that's a key piece to it. And then I think the other key piece is investors. Not everyone can bootstrap their own startup. We need external financing to make things happen. And, we've received a lot of non-dilutive funding being here in Alberta. We've been very successful with Alberta Innovates funding that helped us get off the ground, as well as NRC IRAP. The very first money in came from NRC IRAP in 2019 in the form of a youth employment program. And so it's that type of thing that allows us to exist today, to do some of that initial product development work before we can de-risk it to the point where angel investors are interested. And so we need those angels and those angel investors that are interested in investing in products and know the risks that, startups are risky. So
that's, again, so interesting to hear along the way. Again, if we got the timeline out, we would hear there's sort of you and, a few other people. You've got your idea, you're getting it off the ground. You now got the strategy, that leads to this win at this moment in time. And this isn't obviously the last stop on your route as you kind of go forward. Then you're bringing in these subject matter experts kind of as needed. You've got this expertise coming in to fill in those knowledge gaps. You're aware of those knowledge gaps in a sense and getting those things along the way. You would have gotten so many great tips, just anecdotal moments from some of those people along the way. There's the investors themselves, and then there's all these different levels of government funding that you're describing. Federal, you've got your provincial support along the way. So all those pieces take so much time. Obviously, you know what it's like probably to burn the midnight candles to get those applications filled in and whatever, and then you would have gotten some help here and there. So again, tremendous persistence through that. What a great group that you've had going forward to this point. And who else is going to be in your future. Like you would have almost a roadmap for some of the other people along the way. And if we had lots of time, we would go for those future wins as well and find out who those experts are going to be. But you're going to meet more people along the way because you've got the muscle to build out that group. The fourth step is operationally what was needed to be in play here. I'm going to suggest things like regulatory understanding, any sort of government cross-border issues, those types of things. There might also be even some, not IP, but original types of applications for actually building things or putting chemicals together. And I'm saying that in the roughest way because I don't know your business, but it's this idea of like operationally, if you had to give us the highlights for this win, how would you describe them?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I think I'm going to take it in like a slightly different direction, if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Yeah.
And we're a virtual team, and we've been a virtual team for most of the duration of this of Mach 32 that we've been working operationally virtually. And so some of the things that we did virtually was to really focus on team cohesiveness, because it can get quite isolating when you work at home in front of your desk. The work, there's tons of advantages to that, but there's also some downsides to that. And so we put some things in play operationally to make sure that we had that team cohesiveness, because we had to lift above their weight, and we had to all punch above our weight class, right? And we had to be greater than the sum of our parts. So one of the things that we did, and this wasn't even work related per se, is we did a virtual Starbucks Fridays, where we would just meet on Fridays, not always, and we wouldn't always have Starbucks, but it would be like, bring your coffee or bring your drink, and we're just going to spend half an hour having water cooler talk. And we're just gonna chat, and it's gonna be non-work related, and we're just gonna make sure that we keep those connections and that human touch point there, in addition to our regular meetings and team meetings and everything like that. So I think that kind of cohesiveness of our team in a virtual, very spread out environment, we're spread out throughout the province, helped a lot in burning the midnight oil, making sure we're all pulling in the right direction, and making sure, the grant writing lifts were big lifts. And so hours and hours and hours of lifts.
How would you describe, you could be cold about it in a sense and not do Starbucks Fridays, right? If you just want to sort of bang things out. Why was it important? How would you describe the attitude or the values of this team at this moment in time that made that important?
Well, one of my big values, and I think this translates to the team, is that people matter, right? It's often said that investors invest in the management team because a good management team will know how to pivot. And well, when you're a 4-person company, your whole team is essentially the management team. They're all an extension. They're all doing heavy lifts. They're all working outside their comfort zone potentially. And so I think that that's important, that people matter, and you get to know your people. We also had a couple of younger people on our team, and when I say younger, I mean recent graduates. And when you're coming into the workforce for the first time and you're working remotely, I think that can be really challenging. So we wanted to develop those relationships and those touch points, and make sure that myself is approachable for this group, and we're talking. I like to be very transparent about what's going on. Not everyone's like that, but that's who I am.
You're building a people first approach, but aren't you supposed to just be excited about tech and cool chemistry things and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I am excited about cool tech and stuff, but it's the people who drive it. I heard an interesting saying, and that is like, we volunteer our creativity. Right? I can pay one of our staff members to do a job, and they can do it, but they're volunteering their insights, their creativity, their work ethic into that. They don't have to give me that. And so I'm trying to create an environment where everybody can thrive, and they want to be a part of it, and they want to bring their ideas. And this is the third startup that I've been a part of, that's been founded out of Edmonton. And I still have the relationships with the original people that I worked with. And it just all cycles back around. I don't know. people matter. And that's kind of the end of that.
We could end the interview there. If someone just heard the last 30 seconds of gold that you just brought to that is just, what doesn't that say a ton about your approach, your team's approach, and why you've been successful through what is not easy as you're hacking through the jungle, writing those grant applications, you're developing, you're inventing, you're doing your things along the way. This is not a straight path. It's not like, oh, we do this and then we're there. You would have had to travel. It's a winding road. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a winding road, sometimes like upside down through the jungle, and you're hacking your way through it. Like there are times, I don't know if I should share this story, but we were in the States and we were doing some product testing and it wasn't going so well. And we didn't have any workspace in the States. So like you like took over the lobby of the hotel trying to build our prototypes in the lobby. And we were going there. I mean, we probably started that day at 6:30 a.m. and we were going out to the testing site. Then we were back in the lobby of the hotel till 11 p.m. trying to problem solve, right? That's the drive you have to have sometimes too, and that's what you have to instill in your team. Like, we're going to make this happen no matter what. So
we're going to make this happen no matter what. Hotel lobbies or fancy labs, whatever you're doing, you're making it happen. Oh, wow. That is just good. So I've heard the strategy. I've heard the work plan. We talked a lot about the people. The attitude of the people is really, really clear about why you're getting to this level of success. You get this win. How do you measure the results? What do you measure, qualitative, quantitative, to know that this was a success?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's very specific metrics and deliverables that we have to hit as part of this contract. But I mean, at the end of the day, the success is, are we farther along the commercialization pathway than we were when we started this? I hope not, but it's possible that we're gonna learn something and we're gonna have to pivot, right? But it's, are we closer to commercializing this? And when I think of commercializing, I think of, are we closer to getting this into the hands of the people that need it, right? And it's not just, hey, can I make a buck? It's, can I get it into the hands? Before Christmas, I was out meeting with, how should I describe him? Let's go with Doc, who works for Department of Defense and who is actively deployed. So let's go with military physician. And he had just come back from being downrange. He had just come back from being deployed. And he said, we went through all our thing. It's hard work. We're slugging. And he goes, I really got to thank you for what you're doing. That we really need this. This is going to make a difference for me and the patients that I treat. Like, let's just keep going. And it's words like that from end users where like, what you're doing is going to help me save a life as soon as you have it available. That's how we measure success, is like, how much closer to that moment are we?
It sounds like you're in it to win it, like for those right reasons. There's something about your own values that's screaming through this. Again, because I'm sure you could be talking about the potential dollar aspect, which is significant, I would think, in this type of application that you're talking about. But here you are emphasizing the end user and how it's going to benefit them.
Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about.
Well, congratulations. It has just been, it's been so insightful for me to learn about this win where you've gotten it to this level of commercialization, or the next step towards what you're doing in the States. And then thanks for describing so articulately your journey. And thanks for not renting out your creativity, but simply bringing it. Right? Again, super insightful for myself. And I know the folks listening are going to get a ton out of this. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Surround yourself with the right people, tell your story over and over until you succeed, and make sure to take a break on Fridays so you can strengthen your team for the heavy lifting they need to do to get your life-saving medical device to market in the United States. What an inspiring win. Thank you, Kelly. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our other episodes, which include how to raise $25 million to acquire a company that fits your vision, how founder Alvin Pike got a win for Helical Peer Systems. And if you want to find out more about the anatomy of a win, so you can learn how to reverse engineer a past win in a structured way to get more business wins in the future, then check out our workshops at executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you to grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.